An initiative of the Greater Des Moines Partnership formed in 2007, the Business Innovation Zone, the BIZ, exists to connect entrepreneurial needs with qualified resources and to provide guided professional and business direction. The BIZ helps entrepreneurs maximize their successes by helping them navigate resources, strengthen knowledge, improve skills, form strategic alliances, and secure proper capitalization. To find out more about the BIZ, visit www.bizci.org.
I'm Mike Caldwell. I'm the Executive Director of Entrepreneurial Initiatives for the Partnership. I'm responsible for the Business Innovation Zone, Plains Angels, the recent Global Insurance Accelerator initiative that's kicking off right now. Basically work with entrepreneurs from I have an idea and I don't know what to do next to raising funding, which we'll be talking about a little bit today.
Sure.
Before we get started, I just want to tell you that next month, this seems to be fundraising quarter, because next month we will have Roby Miller of Telefarm here. Roby just closed a $2.5 million round.
Yep.
And it seems to be the month of it, because Igor is getting ready to close up on $1.5 million. The guys at sorry, about to say your name. There's so many of them, I'm losing track. Men's Style Lab is in the process of closing a round and oversubscribed. So I got to tell you, it seems like all of a sudden fundraising in the area is getting much more straightforward. So good to see. And we'll have Roby next month, and then we've got Brett Burkhart from Web Studios, who's done a whole new set of products for the industry in October. And in November, we actually have John Jacobin of Bought will just be finishing up his experience at Techstars, and is going to come in and tell us what that was like. We'll hope that he doesn't have too many bruises and, you know, like armbands on him. It's been a rough go for him, but that's what accelerators can be like. So anyway, if there's somebody you know that you think needs some help from an entrepreneurial standpoint, trying to get connected, whatever, just let me know. Happy to help however I can. So with that, I'd like to introduce AJ Nelson. Welcome, AJ. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to all of you guys and hopefully give you some words of wisdom.
So first of all, where's your partner?
Joe.
Yeah, what happened? Because Joe is going to be here.
Joe was going to be here. Unfortunately, got a little delayed on some of our releases, so I'm sure all of you know how that goes. So he's at home working right now.
Yeah, so he did the right thing. He left him at home to get the work done. So,
yeah.
So just to start out, tell us how you got started, how you and Joe got started with this from an idea standpoint. How'd that start?
Yeah, you know, I think it's kind of a trend that a lot of companies, you know, they don't really come from an idea. They come from needs. You know, so Joe and I were both students at the University of Iowa, and I believe our sophomore year, you know, we were so used to going to these big lecture halls, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate. There's 500 kids in a class, and by the end of the semester, we were lucky to have met like 3 or 4 of the kids in our class. So this is kind of the first thing that really got us going. Like, you know, college is supposed to be this really social experience. You know, we're supposed to meet all of these people in college. You know, we were at like the bars and at the, you know, at social events, but you don't meet anyone like actually on campus. There's just these weird social barriers. So that's kind of pain point number 1. And pain point number 2 was really an experience. Joe and I were taking a test together. We were studying. It was the night before an exam. We ran into a roadblock on our study guide. We were sitting around, you know, in the library at midterms times. There's thousands of kids at the University of Iowa. There was 500 kids in our lecture hall. You know, we emailed our TAs. We emailed our professors like 11 at night. Our exam was 10 a.m. the next morning. You know, we didn't get any responses. Went and took the exam, did really bad. And after the exam, we were talking, and we were like, you know, this is ridiculous. We have 500 kids in our class. There are literally thousands of kids sitting around us in the library studying. Like, odds are that one of the kids in our class was probably in the library and probably could have helped us out with this quick question, and we could have, you know, done well on the exam. And it was kind of just like hit us in the face, right? That it's such an easy problem that you should be able to talk to the kids you see 3 or 4 times a week at lecture. Right? It's so simple that we assumed that something out there had already been built. You know, so our first inclination is, hey, we didn't pay attention in class. Like, there's a tool out there that does this. You know, so we looked, and there wasn't a tool that did that. So then we kind of dove into the market, and we quickly found that, you know, there really wasn't anything that was really a social platform or network built around the classroom. You know, so that's really where ClusterFlunk began.
So you started out at Iowa. You started your bootstrap. to begin with, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty much on your own. We were laughing about going to banks for financing on startups, which doesn't tend to work very well.
No.
You got an amazing amount of traction at the U of I pretty quickly. Can you tell us about that process from kind of like no users to the numbers that you were producing that first year?
Yeah, so it's a funny thing. When we thought of ClusterFlunk, right, what we did is we kind of, we got an office at the Bedell Learning Lab at the University of Iowa, which was great. We fixed up the showers on the 3rd floor. We got an extra office there, and we just slept there. We brought our sleeping bags. So like we lived at this place for around 6 months, and we didn't go to class. We didn't go out. We didn't see our friends, and we just worked. We put our heads down and really just like we're set on building this product. Looking back, it was a great experience for us, but we probably could have consolidated that down to like 2 or 3 weeks now that we know what we're doing. We spent a lot of time in the wrong areas, and we were learning along the way, reading a lot of literature. But the funniest thing is we did that for an entire semester and a summer all the way through like the fall semester.
Okay.
And by the time the last weekend of school, we read a book called Nail It, Then Scale It, if anyone has ever heard of it. No. There's a really, really great part of there's a chapter within this book, I believe, and it's all about a smoke and mirrors test. So is anyone familiar with what a smoke and mirrors test is? Maybe? No? So it's basically where you create something fake and see if people will convert through it to validate your idea.
Yep.
So what we did is we literally took 2 days, as opposed to 6 months. We whipped up a landing page. We scraped the course lists, so we had all of the courses at the University of Iowa, and we bought like 5,000 flyers for like $200. And we went on campus that next Monday and handed out all those flyers. We also had like teams of megaphones and stereo speakers, and we ended up getting a trespassing ticket that Monday of finals. But we handed out all of these things, and it allowed students to go pick their classes and press sign up. And that took them to a submit form that said, hey, we will be live next semester, see you then. Right? And we populated some of the fields, so when you looked at a class, there was already like 10 kids in it. But that first day, we had 1,000 people sign up.
Nice.
So we had instant validation. It was pretty obvious just from us putting, our thoughts onto a flyer and handing that to other people, that was a big enough problem that it got 1,000 people in one day. But it's funny looking back at that whole process, right? Because we could have done that first.
Yeah.
Instead of the 6 months, we burned our heads. So definitely a big learning point there.
I did the same thing. Well, I spent $50,000 and then found out I should have spent $1,500. But why do we all have to do that the hard way?
Like you just said earlier, it's one of those things that probably 10 people told us not to do that, but you really don't get it until like it happens to you and you go through those experiences.
Right. So you've just gone through. Well, you went through an expansion. So you tell me. Go on a little bit further. You get the first 1,000.
Yeah.
Where did you get to at the U of I? Where are you at now at the U of I?
Yeah, so the University of Iowa now, we have like 2/3 of the university using the product.
So how many people is that?
Right around 14,000.
14,000.
Of like roughly 21,000 undergrads. So wow. It's a lot of kids, right? It's some great traction. It's been a lot of learning along the way, and it's really simple. It's what we do is
I love it when people have done something so amazing. Say it's really simple.
It's really simple. Those things, those big points that people tell you, like it is that simple. You just have to follow it. It's really hard work. We listen to our customers. So kind of going back to where I left off. We had 1,000 people pre-registered. We ended up throwing like a launch party in Iowa City. We had 1,000 people come to that the first week. The second week we were live, we had another 1,000 sign up. Like. Joe and I are like, hey, this is easy, right? Like, we're the next Facebook for sure. Like, this is going to take off. We were like 19 at the time. And
versus the grand old age of what right now?
Just turned 22.
It's even legal to drink now.
So this is very much still idea stage. And then, after that second 1,000, people completely dropped off. We went from like 500 daily active users to like 2 or 3. So the site just completely died. And this is, we got the feeling that people weren't using the product. We had all these crazy features. We had this crazy design, and we're just pumping features out left and right. And it's actually, this is a kind of a tangent, but a really funny story. So we're actually at our first investor meeting ever. So this is when we're really young, at our meeting our very first angel. And we got this piece of feedback on our phone. We use Wufoo for feedback. So it's a form, and it pings you every time you get a submission. This piece of feedback, so this is like 3 weeks into the semester, And this person, they signed it anonymously as Seymour Butts, which is really funny.
Right.
That Seymour Butts forever changed our company. But he left a piece of feedback that said, hey, I just logged onto your site, I read your marketing messages, and you guys completely suck. He said, your product actually makes it harder for me to meet the kids in my class. It actually makes it harder for me to talk to them. And he's like, your UX is awful, your implementation is awful. You completely over-marketed this really bad product. He's like, specifically, you two need to go back to the drawing boards and relaunch this thing if you ever want to make it a real company. So like what I did is I had this on my phone, and Joe almost killed me, but I showed our investor, our potential investor. Mm-hmm. Because in my mind, I was thinking, if this person really bought into our value prop, saw all these signups, and really believes in Joe and I, he's going to help us right now, right? And he's not going to like scoff at us. And he loved the transparency, and he actually did help us.
Good.
So that created a lot of trust between us before he actually invested. But so from that piece of feedback, our site did suck. And what we did is we took about a month and relaunched. What we thought when we first built it, we were big into literature. We thought we were crazy lean, and we thought we had an MVP, but we were completely wrong. And our second version is actually like almost the same version we use today. So that was like our true MVP. We cut down all features, and it's just pure functionality. There aren't any features. It's just like, a feed, and you can view people's profiles, and you can instant message, and you can write on their walls. It's not like a breakthrough technology here by any means.
Sounds familiar.
Right? Like every social network out there.
Sounds
but
familiar.
it's really, really interesting on how easy it was, once you see these problems and listening to your customers. So after that semester, we had 10% of the university on board, which was some great traction. That summer we raised a round of $100K. Some from some local angels here, like Ben Milne and Brad Dwyer in the back, and Josh Kramer from Iowa here. That next semester, kind of long story short, we had right around 50% of the university on board. And now we have 2/3 of the university on board.
And you haven't just done Iowa. So tell me about the expansion, because you guys went on an expansion.
Yep.
I have the benefit of been talking to these guys for a while, so I know a little bit of the story. But tell them about the expansion.
Yeah.
How you did it.
Expansion sucks. It's hard. There's no way around it. And we definitely bit off a lot, but we definitely proved ourselves out. So our entire motto was, first off, a big learning point for us too is we wanted to expand right off the bat. And we were actually, we never really had a formal board, but we kind of had informal board meetings with all of our seed investors. And we were talking to Ben, actually, Milne, talking to him on how we just wanted to keep growing and adding more universities. And he asked us why. We said, well, obviously, we want to keep getting our product to as many users as we can. And we want to keep growing. If we keep growing, it adds more value. More value means we can raise money. And he just kind of looked at us and he's like, no, that's wrong. We're like, okay, please explain. And he's like that doesn't matter. He's like, you're a two-man team right now, which we just were until this last couple months. But he's like, it doesn't really matter how many customers you have. It really matters how happy the customers you have are. So from that kind of piece of feedback, we really started honing in on the University of Iowa and really figuring out that recipe, right? Because if you can figure out that recipe, you can go raise money and you can go repeat that recipe at other places. It was definitely a huge learning point to us that there's no reason to scale when you haven't hit traction or the tipping point in your first community. Right.
And that's a hard lesson for a lot of people to get is don't grow until you really get it right.
Yeah, and we've done it like twice. So hopefully we've learned from our mistakes.
So how many universities are you in now?
We're at 15.
15.
Yep.
So you've been at those for what, 6 months?
Just as of January of this year, so one semester.
Okay. And what kind of traction are you seeing that you can talk about?
Yeah.
I don't want to ask you, the stuff that you can't comment, so I can't comment.
No, I can totally comment. So traction-wise, we kind of got our recipe for scaling, as I said, down to a science. We need roughly like 8 to 10% of the university to at least register that first semester. And we obtained that at all 15 of these universities this last January. And it's basically, it's matching up to Iowa's growth. So they matched Iowa's growth, which is really, really exciting for us. So those schools will be entering their second semester. Actually, some did on Monday.
Great.
Next week and the week after.
Yeah, you're in a bit of a push right now. Thanks for coming over in the middle of your biannual push.
No,
I appreciate that. Good. So you've raised money recently. You raised a round. How long did that take? Tell us about the experience. A lot of people want to know. Mm-hmm. So when did you start raising money? Who helped you? And how long did it take?
Yeah. So I think before all of that, a thing we always like to say about raising money is that you shouldn't spend time on raising money, so early stage. You should be putting all of that time into your product, into getting traction, into getting users and making those users really happy. Because if you're doing that, the right people will come to you. That was one thing that we really figured out. It's not about making business plans. It's not about making presentations. It's not about getting intros or connections. It's about making the correct product, and all of the right people will come to you. Since it's always been our philosophy behind raising since day one, and it's worked out really, really well.
It has.
But as far as how long it took us to raise, our first seed round, the 100K, I don't remember how long it took. Not that long. Once we got that 10% traction, guys like Brad, for instance, we knew Brad a while before that.
Right.
But, people that know what they're doing and see that kind of transparency and see results like that will come to you, and they'll be interested in working with you and putting, their time and their money into you. Yep. It's not about going out and hunting these guys down, if that makes sense. One great piece of feedback that we've always done for raising as well is to create a relationship with these people a year before.
Right.
If you don't, the best time to go meet people is when you don't need anything. You're not looking for money, you're looking for mentors. And, creating a relationship with them, letting them watch you grow basically is the best way, at least, for two 21-year-olds to gain trust and to really, catch the eye of really great people.
Right.
But yeah, it didn't take that long for the first 100K. I really don't know a time frame behind it. Probably 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
So not bad. It was pretty quick once you get traction like that. People were really enthused, and once you get a lead, it's all downhill from there. And this last raise,
you just said some owner people. Once you get a lead,
yeah,
it's all downhill. So the hardest is the first.
Yep.
Because they set the terms, they give you legitimacy, especially if it's somebody from the industry or known in a circle.
Yep.
Oh, Sheldon's in that company. Okay, everybody knows Sheldon's. Really? I better go look at that. It's a lead. That's a really big deal.
Yep. So. And it's and I can't stress enough that it's finding the correct investors for you is so important. You shouldn't be looking for money. There's so much money out there. It doesn't you getting money is not going to help you. You getting money shouldn't be a goal. You getting people and things that can take you to the next level of your company should be. So it's so important to find the correct fit with if you're raising venture money or angel money, finding those people that, their mentorship or their connections or whatever they're doing can help get your company to the next level is so much more important than a check. Yeah.
So your second round, Lightbank, led the round.
Yep.
Took the vast majority of it.
Yep.
So tell them a little bit about who Lightbank is and how long did that process take?
Yeah, Lightbank is great. They're it's the co-founders of Groupon's. It's their personal fund. So it's it's really cool. They're a really, really awesome venture capital fund because they don't necessarily have LPs. It's, these guys have taken 3 companies public or 4 companies public. So it's just their personal money. So they can move really, really quickly. So how that process went is, our views stayed the same. We went to the Bay. We actually took a train out there and couch surfed for 7 weeks. A lot of fun. But, we went out there with the intentions of raising, but we kind of knew in the back of our heads it was more about planting seeds for a true Series A more than anything. We knew we were kind of early on really getting money from out there. So we just wanted to, go and meet all of these guys, basically to follow kind of our equation for raising. Mm-hmm. So when it comes time to raise our A, we'll know all these guys, which is coming up soon for us.
Right.
And it's really working out. But when we got back from that process, we were still looking to close probably more of an angel round, and Lightbank cold emailed us, to be completely honest. So it holds true that if you're doing the right things, and people are excited about you and you're creating real value in this world, that the right people will come to you. it's like, I guarantee it'll happen.
Now, there's one piece you've got that not everybody has. You have the name.
Yes.
You have to admit, the name sticks. Some of your investors had advice for you on the name.
Yeah, they wanted us to change it.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't either, and that was...
It's perfectly irreverent, something that the average 19-year-old would love, so...
Very true.
But no, and their name got out in the press a lot. I mean, obviously, there's something to be said for a crazy name because the press likes to use it. It's just fun for somebody to publish the word ClusterFlunk and not get called by the FCC or somebody. So that did help.
Yeah, the press helped a lot.
Yeah.
That's true, and we did a lot of things to catch the press's eye. Just internally, these are the things that like companies don't talk about, but we've acted like a lot bigger than we are for a long, long time. It's little things like when, on Twitter, like I'll never forget this. When before we were a company, the CEO of a company named Sculpt, which is in Iowa City, his name's Josh Kragauer, like one of the very first guys we met in Iowa City, he wanted to take a meeting with us, and he found us on Twitter. He's like, wow, there's a tech company in Iowa City, which at the time was, pretty rare. This is 2 years ago. Excuse me. Reached out to us on Twitter, and he's like, hey, let's meet up for beers. And I was running the Twitter account at the time, and I simply said back, I was working for Dell in Iowa City, and Joe was working for SurveyMonkey out in Palo Alto. And I said, hey, like we'll meet back up in August when our engineering team is back from Palo Alto. This is on Twitter, right? So all these Iowa City accounts, he retweeted that, and all these Iowa City accounts are like, damn, like there's an Iowa City startup that has an engineering team out in the Bay, like what is going on in Iowa City?
And you didn't lie. Your engineering team was in the Bay.
Our engineering team was, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like little things like that, that caught the eye of a lot of Iowa City people. Little things like people don't tell you these kind of things. Like we have a general catch-all account for our email, right? And we direct everyone to that. And then things like little things can go so far as to like, acting like having someone on the team act like they're an office admin and CC you to someone else, right? Like giving the idea to people that you're a big company. It really impresses people. We did a lot of that early on, and to be honest, like we didn't have to do press releases. When you do this kind of stuff, and another thing we did is we retweet all of our users all the time.
Yep.
So we follow like a basic equation for marketing, and I always share this. It's G equals OP plus C minus MM, which is growth equals content plus other people minus marketing messages. So basically what that says is that other people's voices are so much stronger than your actual company's.
Yeah.
So we let all of our users talk for us. So how we planted the seed initially is we had like 20 of our friends say how awesome ClusterFlunk was on Twitter. We retweeted them. We made sure like Silicon Prairie was following us, and like we directed, kind of funneled tweets to all these news people, right? And they're instantly interested. They're instantly, looking for us. So it's to the point now where, if we make a Facebook post, it'll pick up like 3 or 4 articles.
Right. It's funny because we were talking earlier at lunch about Amazon.
Yeah.
And about the review process, and it's the exact same thing. People buy on Amazon based on reviews.
Yep.
The brand might get you to look at a product, but you'll buy or not buy based on reviews. So it's the same idea.
Yep.
Cool. So Chicago, you've got an office in Chicago now.
Yes.
What's that like?
It's awesome.
You like being in Chicago?
We do. It's really fun to go to a new environment in a new city. It's just really cool just to grow your company, right? Right now our biggest focus is hiring, and it's definitely a big learning curve for us. We're young. It's our first company. It's the things that no one ever tells you are going to be the hardest, like hiring and management, right? Like no one ever tells you that's going to be hard. Once you think you have the money, that's the hard part, right? Like everything falls into place. Not true at all.
Right.
A few books that have really like helped us, along with mentors as well, is the book Traction, if you guys have ever heard of that.
Yeah.
And Peopleware is a great book on how to run technology companies. Really helped to like structure our meetings, just how we run the company, basically.
Your company operating system.
Yep.
Yeah. People always diss big companies because they have all the structure and everything. Then you meet somebody that's been through this a few times, like, but we really needed a structure.
Yeah.
that mass organization doesn't work out so well.
You have to. Yeah.
Hey, let's open up for questions. Question from the floor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you patented? Are you in a situation where, and one of the reasons people try to run so fast is you don't want somebody to take your idea and do it somewhere else. What are you seeing along that line, your concerns, and how is that?
So from an intellectual property standpoint, what protection and...
Yeah, so we have none, and it's pretty. I'm going to say it's pretty like industry standard that you don't for companies like us. And the pure simple fact is that what we're doing is so simple, but it's not. It's so simple on the outside, right? But for someone to replicate us, like they couldn't. Someone's not going to be able to replicate us to a T. Like there's tons of companies. Actually, this is really crazy. About 3 months ago, so it turns out 6 months ago, this guy pinged us, and he wanted to make a username. And I was like, yeah. I gave him a username, checked out the site. I didn't really pay attention to who he was. And 3 months later, he messaged me, and he wanted to meet up again. And we were actually in San Francisco, and he was out in the Bay. And about 10 minutes before the meeting, I'm like, okay, I should look at who this person is. So I look at him, and I realize he has a site called, I'm not going to name them. I don't remember what it was, but in our market. And I was like, oh. And I made an account really quick, and I realized that they completely stripped our design, completely stripped all of our copy, our marketing messages, like everything to a T.
Yep.
Right, but they still sucked.
Which is common.
They didn't have any traction. So it just goes to show that they straight up copied our entire design, all of our UX, all of our marketing, everything we did. But in the end, that's not enough still. So we like to think that, and kind of our view on competitors is we don't really pay attention to them. We don't really have time to. Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd the meeting go?
How'd the meeting go?
Oh, I didn't go.
You didn't go.
Yeah,
Good answer.
I emailed him and said no. Said I'm busy.
Say why, or you just say?
No, I just said
Pass.
we can't meet today, and that was it. I'm sure he got the memo though.
So the students who sign up, do you consider them your customers, your audience, your users? How do you refer to them?
So what are the students that sign up? Are they the customers, your audience? What are they?
They're everything. They're our customers, they're our audience. In the future, that's basically without them, we don't have a business, right? So we frame our like the UX of that, like the user design, the user experience of that is the entire company right now. We don't have any revenue. We don't plan to have any revenue for like maybe a year and a half. So just basically getting them to love the site, to be completely addicted to the site is like our number one goal right now.
They're also one of your best forms of advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a very organic uptake that...
So I have a follow-up then. So
Yeah.
what happens after they're done teaching classes?
What happens after they're done?
What's the next,
Yeah.
what do they do?
So that's kind of a plague of our market, right? Is that in the summer, anyone in our market, their traction sucks. It's dead. So that's something like in the future we'll have to tackle. But right now, the traction that we do have during the semester is valuable enough to us and to people that want to put money into us that it doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but you spend a lot of time acquiring whatever you're calling customers or users or whatever, and then generally at the end of 4 years,
Oh, okay.
they're going to...
Oh, so what happens after they leave college?
Yeah, after they leave college, we don't have an answer for that right now. The churn is high enough that there's more students coming in than there are leaving. So that's not a problem for us. But yeah, definitely a problem in the future that we'll have to tackle. As every successful company that builds a platform, what they do is they tackle one market first. Then they open up into everything else, right? So we've made plans of that in the future. That we're tackling a generic enough problem that we can apply it in a lot of different markets and things like that. But for right now, we have to do step one before we can get there.
Alex?
Do you guys have a partnership with the University of Iowa? Because I know I've been in school for 3 years there now, and I would get 2 or 3 emails a week about joining ClusterFlunk. And the main reason I did it because of the name. I thought the name was cool, so I thought I'd check it out. And it's really nice and all that. But do you guys have some kind of...
Yeah, so what's your relationship with the colleges?
No, not at all.
None.
None. Which is great for us. And that was, Joe and I personally, when we looked at the market, we saw all of these kind of top-down structures. So there's a lot of companies that, and when I say that, they mean they'll go sell B2B, so to the university, for instance, sell to the university gives the product to the professors give the product down to the students, and the students are kind of the last afterthought in all of this, right? Like, for instance, like, did you know Icon has a collaboration tool like ISIS and Icon does?
Yeah, kind of. There's like one class that had like a Picasa, I think was the one that
Nice.
tries to use.
Have you ever used it?
Kind of for one class, but like it's kind of, with stuff like ClusterFlunk, only the students who are doing well and want to, keep doing well. A lot of the smart students are the ones who
So that was that was our first reaction, right? Like all these university-built tools, all these professor-built tools, just sucked. Like it was so bad and such a big, like glaring problem that we wanted to create a product that was for the consumers. We didn't have to go to businesses, we didn't have to go to universities to sell, and companies in our space do that, and they grow. If you could imagine like the bureaucracy behind selling to universities, right? If we wanted to scale to 15 universities next year, we'd have to hire a sales team, and they'd have to go pitch to these universities, and that's probably like a 4 or 5 month process. Like who knows? Like how we scale is, we need like 2 or 3 things, and we go to a school. It takes like a week. So
it's funny. You're doing the same thing in a way that Salesforce did when they first launched.
Yep.
Salesforce did not go sell to the corporations. They sold to the individuals in the corporation and said, for $99, I'll solve your problem. And I mean, I know in my company personally, we ended up on Salesforce because one of our sales VPs did it on a weekend and built the system he needed because IT couldn't deliver it, and for $99, and it worked. So marketing to the person with the end need and knowing what that need is. And the truth is, most people in undergrad, traditional age undergrads, are not going to listen to what the university tells them to do. They're going to do the opposite. It's who they are.
Yep, and it's really cool, like in the same breath as Salesforce, really cool that, we sell, technically we sell to the consumers, right? Like we're making a product for the students, but now that we have enough traction at the University of Iowa that every professor like at that university is on ClusterFlunk. Whether they like it or not, they have to get on there. A lot of professors, conform to using it to blast out their curves. A lot of them do open office hours on ClusterFlunk. So they use it for a number of different things, but it's really cool that we built this product for the consumers, got enough traction that
Everybody
the
else has to be
professors,
there.
they didn't have an option. They had to get on.
Sure. What framework you built it on? Is that right?
Yep,
Software
it's a pyramid, Python back end and a Backbone JS front end. And we use tons of technologies within that. We use Firebase for all of our real-time stuff. Hundreds of different libraries for different and other things, but those are kind of the primary stacks that we use.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where were you guys from, and were you entrepreneurial when you started school, and this was always something you wanted to do?
And how did you meet?
Yeah.
What's your backstory?
To an extent, like how we met is actually a great story. Joe and I grew up in Cedar Rapids. We went to Cedar Rapids Prairie, if you guys are all familiar with that. We actually grew up riding the same bus, but we weren't friends. Like, we kind of just connected the dots that we actually rode the same bus like 2 years ago.
Nice.
But, how we met is, we always kind of had the same friends, but we were never really friends until our junior year of high school. And I was an athlete, and my first university I actually played football at. And so my junior year of high school, I needed help on making a highlight film, that had all of the cuts on it, and we'd send it out to universities. And I knew Joe was really great with technology, and he was probably, my coach couldn't do it, and which is a whole other story, should have been able to, but I knew Joe was probably the only person at the high school that could, so I approached him and asked him if we could work on this project together. And my mom ended up paying him I think a couple $100, and we spent every day after school for 3 weeks, building our first product. Just we watched film together, we cut it up, we put it on DVDs, and we sent it out to universities, and it actually ended up getting me a scholarship, which is really cool. So our first product we built a friendship around and built together, got us technically some money.
Yeah.
But ever since then, we went to separate colleges first. Joe used to be an amateur DJ, and I would, at schools that I was at, or his schools, I would throw these big events, and Joe would come in and DJ, and we'd make some money under the table. Got a bunch of tickets, of course.
In other words, you're entrepreneurial. To answer the question, yeah.
Yep, and kind of what really capped our kind of entrepreneurial mindset was I had an internship in Dallas, my freshman summer of college, And it was basically where I just got to follow the CEO and founder around for an entire summer. So he would got me a couple suits, and he would throw me in these meetings. He'd give me a title and be like, AJ here is our financial analyst for today, or analyst for today, and he's going to answer questions. And we'd go into board meetings and stuff, and he'd direct stuff to me, right? So he kind of just threw me into the fire, and he got me an apartment, gave us gas cards. So I was like, Joe, I'm like, you have to come visit me. This guy is showing us the life here and really feeding us entrepreneurship. So Joe came down, and he basically just spoon-fed both of us and another friend that was with me that we had to start our own company, that we were talented kids. He saw something in us that drove him to just keep talking to us. And he's been our first mentor since day one.
Nice.
So there's a little backstory to answer your question.
Yeah.
I guess I think you made a comment on this earlier. You don't see it to be this product has become a profitable endeavor for a couple of years, and maybe the landscape is completely different by that time. But what do you see as the start of that profit?
Yeah. So revenue.
That's a great question. Yeah, right. And I have no idea. And it's something that we don't hide. And it's and kind of our mindset behind that is we see that so from back day one, this is another story I didn't tell. The very first VC we ever met with was a guy named Mamoon Hamid in Chamath, which he's the guy in charge of growing Facebook from 1 million users to 1 billion users. So they run a fund out in the Bay called Social Plus Capital. And their biggest mentality, what they have on their wall, is do social good first and revenue will follow. So they kind of put this into our belief system that if we're providing enough value into a certain demographic, that there will be X, Y, and Z ways to turn money out of it. So we've talked about probably tens or hundreds of ideas.
I was going to say, we had several conversations you could fill a book, right?
Yeah, you could fill a book with what we're going to do. What we will end up doing, I have no idea. And so to kind of back that up, all it's about is surrounding yourself with people that believe in that too. So Lightbank, they didn't ask us a revenue question probably till our very last meeting. So it's something that they didn't care about, and they see enough opportunity in this, and we can bring in a team to do that once we get there. But it's about surrounding yourself with people that also have that same vision as well. So as to how we'll make money, I don't know. We'll have to see.
But you will build a user base.
Yes.
You are building a user base that is one of the most targeted user bases in all of advertising. Is 18 to 34 is the numbers you hear everywhere, and then male versus female, and so he's got demographics on these people that are just amazing. And he's not just getting one set of 18 to 34. To Doug's question, what happens when they leave? Well, it's who's coming in, not who's going out. Mm-hmm. You basically have the opportunity to market to every college student, or almost every college student. So there's a ton of opportunity.
Yeah,
what you're building as
crazy
value.
demographic, or we have crazy statistics. We know at the University of Iowa, 75% of the students there have iOS, and they use iOS as their, they have an iPhone. So information like that alone is worth money. Right. And if we wanted to slap an ad on a site, we could probably make 5 or 10 or 15 grand a month if we really, really wanted to. But is that money worth it right now? Absolutely not. 5 grand a month right now to us is not worth hurting the value cost of our growth.
Right.
Yeah.
Earlier you emphasized the value and not necessarily looking for the investors for the money, but first looking for the right people and building those relationships a year in advance.
Yep.
And you've kind of touched on that in a couple different ways of how you did that.
Uh-huh.
Could you expound upon how those relationships began and how you could have kind of the foresight to see the groups of people to connect with a year ahead of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how they happened was, it's really simple, right? We built a product on our own, and we had users, and people wanted to meet us. So that got us a first base of people that knew that we were providing real value, and those people were so inclined that they wanted to introduce us to other people that knew that were doing awesome, that had done stuff in the space or done previous things. So it all comes back to getting traction, right? Like for example, a guy named Dan Smith, if you guys have ever met him in Iowa City, had heard that ClusterFlunk was doing well our first semester. So he literally cold emailed us, and he's like, hey, like, you guys are doing something really awesome. Let's have coffee. After our first coffee, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to take you to Des Moines next week, and you're going to meet Ben Milne. You're going to meet maybe you. No?
Yeah, I don't remember if that was
We met like Tej and Christian.
Right.
You know, he just took us on the rounds. We met everyone in Des Moines, and then after that, we met Josh Kramer in Iowa City.
Right.
You know, so it was all kind of downhill from there. But it was literally like, if you're doing the right thing, like, the right people will come to you. You know, so it's more about, like, you shouldn't have to go find money. Like, there's so many ways you can build traction without money. You know, for like us personally, you know, this is a big learning point for us too. Like, we were so set that we needed 15 grand to get ClusterFlunk to the point where it would be like real traction, that we hunted for like weeks trying to get to 15 grand. It was actually that very first investor. You know, so he's like, okay, like, you know, make up a plan and I'll sit down and listen to it. So he's out of Dallas, Texas. He sat down and listened to us. He's like, I'm not going to give you 15 grand. He's like, you need to go get 15 grand on your own. He's like, it's so easy. He's like, you're students, like, go get student loans. He's like, if you love this idea enough and you believe in it that much, he's like, go get a student loan for 15 grand. He's like, no good investor that you meet is going to give you $15,000. So he's like, when it comes to that point, you need to put your own money into it. You need to get traction. And then he's like, you're going to have the respect of everyone. And so that's what we did. We went and got student loans, and we put our own money into ClusterFlunk, and then we dropped out the next semester after that. But,
Amy Jo, close yours. Yeah.
But, you know, it was all about getting it. You just have to find a way to do it, and the right people will come to you. Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for people to get traction with a little bit of investment of their own. Mm-hmm. There really is.
And it's really,
in the back.
Yeah.
Can you repeat your equation again, the growth
Yeah.
equation?
Yeah, your growth equation.
This is, it's G equals OP plus C minus MM. So growth equals content plus other people minus marketing messages.
Minus marketing messages.
What other questions do you guys have? None?
Oh, come on. Brad's got a bunch in the back somewhere.
Yeah, Brad, you had like 10 on Facebook.
Let's see here. So you were talking about, you presented last night at the Iowa Startup Accelerator.
Yep.
Have you thought about going into an accelerator? Did you ever apply to an accelerator? And
Yes.
would you now? I mean, what does that all mean
Yeah,
to you?
it's a great question. And I think accelerators are great at a certain stage in your company. You know, so when we were in our early days, we were like thirsting to get into an accelerator.
Okay.
Like, we applied to every single accelerator known to man, and like, we made a huge push to get into Techstars. Like, we got, you know, letters of recommendation for it. Like, actually, Ben helped us like make this giant map of all the Techstar mentors. We followed all of them on Twitter. We added them all on LinkedIn. You know, we tried to find connections within them to like get friends at the mentors first, and they could recommend us into getting in. You know, which is a great process, and we met a ton of great mentors in the deal of that.
Right.
But you know, once we got traction, and you know, we felt like we had a good enough set of mentors that we didn't need an accelerator. All the accelerators then started wanting us.
Of course.
You know, that's how it is. Like, we were just out in San Francisco 4 months ago, and we interviewed for YC, and everything went really well. And we just decided that we didn't want to go into it.
Right.
You know, at this point, we don't need an accelerator. But yeah, I would definitely recommend an accelerator if you're early stage. You know, they teach you a lot. They get you introduced to the right people. But I don't think an accelerator is not a must, right? It's not something that's going to make your company successful. You know, you can do all the things you do in an accelerator on your own. So it's just more of a personal preference.
No, I agree. And the thing about accelerators are, unless they're really targeted at what you're trying to do.
They all have their own motives.
Right. They exist for a reason. Most of them are for profit.
Yep.
I mean, they're not there just out of the goodness of their heart. They're there to make money.
Yep.
So you have no revenue coming in off the business.
Yep.
You're raising funding.
Yeah.
How much are you paying yourself so that you can actually have clothes? Of course, I can get a haircut once in a while, unless you maybe you guys are cutting each other's hair. But there is a certain level of actual income to you that you must have.
Yeah.
You don't have to say what that number is currently, but how do you determine that? What kind of pushback would you get from funders at this early stage? I don't mean down the road. When you're really getting going, you know, you got that first $100,000 from Ashlings and Ben and those guys, and then the next little piece. You know, you see the shows on TV and stuff, and they want to control, ultra control all that stuff, and well, why did you buy that? You know, how do you handle that, and what's going on with that?
So let me rephrase that for everybody. So I think the question is, pre-revenue, how do you deal with all the costs of paying people? Because most of your costs are people. So you're hiring people competitively, but you're also paying yourselves. So
and how do you determine that?
how do you figure out how much?
You talk to other founders. You know, it's you talk to other founders and see, you know, what they had to do. And to be honest, like, it's, for us at least, you know, there's those kind of investors are out there that are going to, like, you know, watch your nickels and dimes and, like, you know, be mad at you if you spend money here and spend money there. But the ones we wanted to surround ourselves with weren't going to do that, and they don't really care. You know, they trust Joe and I enough that we don't have to give them a monthly financial statement, because they believe that, you know, we're really in this to, like, keep adding value to the company. You know, so, like, in the beginning days, we didn't pay ourselves at all. You know, when we raised that first $100,000, we paid ourselves a little, if you want to call it that.
You still have to eat, you still have to pay for utilities, you still have to have some fun.
Most of the time.
No, they were sleeping in their office. They didn't buy utilities.
So most of the time, and, you know, now we pay ourselves enough to live, so it's not a problem. You know, it's not we're not in it to get big salaries. You know, we don't pay ourselves a big salary, but, you know, you definitely realize, and you just really realize quickly that obviously our biggest cost is salaries. You know, so we pay ourselves a little bit, and we pay our employees a lot. You know, we're big into, like, getting our employees so bought into the company that, you know, they feel either they have equity, or they have enough salary, or they have enough say into everything. You know, it's just about taking care of the people that you get and that are really talented. You know, so we spend a ton of money there, and we have no problem doing that. You know, we will continue to keep spending money there. But, like, as far as marketing, like, we spent, you know, like, our user acquisition numbers were like 9 cents a user for our early days. You know, so we spent like $800 like every 2 months on marketing, quote unquote, and that was just emails. You know, like, we spent $0 on Facebook for, like, our first 6 or 10 months in existence. You know, so you shouldn't have to spend money in the wrong places. You know, like, we spent money on servers and paying ourselves, and that was it. You know, if you're doing the right things, you can do all of them for practically nothing. You know, we'd spend a couple $100s on flyers every once in a while. Emails was our biggest thing, but you find what's working. You know, so we tested A, B, C, D, E, everything out there on small
scales,
figured out what worked, and then started putting our money there.
Mike Kulik, you got a question in the back?
What was the rumor involved in supporting entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
The ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Of course, part of our goal is to make sure there are alternatives for those entrepreneurs to stay in. What can we learn from your move to Chicago that might help us?
So yeah, let me restate. So the idea is, a lot of us that work really hard for entrepreneurship in Des Moines and Iowa would love to have companies stay. Mm-hmm. You guys have opened an office in Chicago. I know you still have an office in Iowa City. Yep. Tell us what we can do to make it easier to stay in Iowa.
Yeah, you know, I think you guys are doing a great job. I don't think nothing, to be honest. Like, a company hits a certain point where they have to start expanding. You know, we've seen this, like, with Dewalla, right? You know, Dewalla opened up offices in New York, in San Francisco, and Kansas City. Right. You know, and a little bit of everywhere. Probably, I don't think they have any people in Chicago. But I think it's just the natural growth of a company. You know, I mean, if you think of really successful companies, they might be headquartered somewhere, but they have other offices everywhere else. You know what I mean? So the biggest thing that, you know, why we opened up an office in Chicago is because there's, you know, our venture capitalists were there. You know, so that's obviously a huge one. And that's no easy task, right? That's, you know, you can't just plant a VC firm and, you know, get it to grow and get a good portfolio underneath that. You know, so that's probably the biggest reason. You know, our views were, if we were going to take this much money from a VC firm, and we, you know, really wanted to create a relationship with them, that we needed to open office where they're at so we could take full advantage of all of that. So advice, like, you know, I think the biggest thing that, you know, a community needs is success stories, right? Success stories drive everyone else. Like that was kind of like been one of our underlying goals from day one, is to like put University of Iowa and Iowa City on the map, right? Like letting kids know that like, hey, 2 kids from Iowa can do this. Right? We spent a lot of time before we started ClusterFlunk. We spent in San Francisco and at Stanford too, like a summer, 4 months. And when we were there, we got invited to like launch parties and all these tech events, and we were just blown away that people cared about technology. Right. So we said, there's no reason this can't be done in Iowa City or at the University of Iowa or in Des Moines, right? So that's when we like decided to throw a launch party. So I think it's not a matter of like doing more. It's about getting more success stories. And I think, in connecting the people who did get successful, giving back to the community, which if they're a good entrepreneur, they will.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd say success stories, getting people to blow up like DeWalla, right? How many people have like fed off of the success of DeWalla? Like I know personally we did. Like Ben was a huge inspiration to us. And, it was one of the bigger reasons we thought we could do what we have done to this point.
Other questions? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were first doing your marketing, what did you find outside of the social and outside of the online? Did you have a piece that really worked well? You talked about Megaphone, the other stuff, put your name on. Was it all just a waste, or did you find something that people kept around that really worked? You'd see around Iowa City. What was most effective?
Physical marketing items?
Yeah. It's a lot of it was. We're big believers that we're a technology company, but we still need that like in-person connection. So like the biggest thing that really drove our growth was just our community. So we read like 10 books on how to like grow communities. So we had this group of power users, and we turned them into like what we call celebs. So they have crowns on their avatars, and like what we did is we started inviting. So like personally, I added all 40 of these kids on Facebook. And I talked to them I set aside 3 hours every Monday, and I would just ping instant. We didn't have a client at that time, but I would instant message all of them, and ask them how their weekends were. I'd slip a ClusterFlunk question in every once in a while. We invited them to our physical office. We gave them a T-shirt. We took a picture with them. We put it online. We invited them to either a coffee or a beer. So we took some of them to a bar and bought them a beer. It was just about them getting to know the CF founders, them getting a T-shirt, them seeing the office, and like us doing that for 40 kids, turned into like, we have like 350 celebs at Iowa now. And these kids are spending like an average of like 50 minutes on the site. They're spending, they create like 80% of our content. So like once we figured that community model up, that's what our growth was all behind. It wasn't behind signups. It wasn't behind anything else. It was all about engagement and getting these power users to love the site. And that is a model with like, not the Facebooks of the world, but like the Reddits of the world and the Stack Overflows of the world and any community site you can think of. People really love being a part of something. So these kids like, just like, this is how insane it was. Like they designed their own shirts with CF on it and a crown on it. Designed it and bought their own shirts. Like, isn't that just insane?
You have them hooked up when they're spending money on their own.
Yeah, like they had no problem doing that, and they wanted to do that. Sheldon.
Is there a metric we should be looking at you guys for a year from now or 6 months from now?
Ooh, that's a great question.
What metric?
Yeah, so a lot of things that we follow and track are just daily actives and monthly actives. That's still a work in progress. Another big thing we track as well is percentage of the university like penetrated. So we're following the growth pattern of Iowa. We want all of these universities to be at least have 45% of them on board by the end of this next semester. And if we do that, we're following our growth patterns at Iowa. So we do tons of like quantitative analysis, and that was actually like a giant learning point and curve for us. Is now we have someone that does that full time, and I wish we would have done this like 6 months ago or a year ago. Like Joe and I intuitively got lucky. We tried X, Y, and Z, and we intuitively like knew what worked and what didn't, and it got us to where we are. But now that we have someone on that full time, like he went back and really found out what we did and really found out what worked, and it was like we were completely besides ourselves. Like, wow, like it wasn't this, and this. It was X, Y, and Z, right? he laid out the exact recipe for us. So we've always said that we were like data driven, right? And I think everyone quotes that they're data driven.
Oh yeah,
but it is so hard to be truly data driven, right? So like when, for instance, right now we're pushing a new design. We're 2 days late. But why we're 2 days late is, we set up tracking. We put all of our mix panel lines of code into all the new designs. We put all of our tracking events into all this stuff, right? It's hard to add days onto a release to add in tracking things and metrics so you can do this instead of just throwing the product out there, right? But it's so worth it when you can see exactly what's going on, and having someone do that full time is insane. So if you could take anything from here, it's to truly be data driven. And if you can't, find someone that can and let them sift your data, or
And also, if you're starting out early and you're actually instrumenting the code in a way is the old way of saying it, so you can pull real analytics. It impresses the heck out of investors if you're even trying to do it. You're not just saying it, you're demonstrating it.
Yep, and it's so true. That was a big learning curve for us. And as far as to kind of finish the metrics, right? So we do all of that. We figured out what works, what doesn't, and then the end of the semester, we really wanted to start tracking value somehow. So we have all these quantitative numbers, this is what we make decisions on. Now we know the recipe, which works. And so we wanted to start tracking value though. So how did we do that? It's we made a survey and we gave it to 500 students, and we asked them, we wanted to see if we're really fulfilling our 2 value props of raising students' learning efficiencies or raising their grades and getting them to meet others in their class. So we asked them these 2 questions, and of the 500 students, 68% of them said that their grades did get better solely because of ClusterFlunk, and 38% of them said that they made one friend in real life because of ClusterFlunk. So if we can keep doing 1 and 2 there, that's huge value, right?
Numbers.
Getting students to learn at a higher rate and getting them to meet others in their class. We met one of our hires now, I met in class at the University of Iowa. You have no idea who those people are that are sitting in this room, right? Your potential co-founders, your potential wives, your friends. It's just kind of a sea of opportunities. So those are 2 big, I guess they're quantitative, but you can't really track them, so they're more qualitative analytics that we really started honing in on.
One more?
Yeah.
You mentioned.
Yeah.
What were the titles that you read that were?
Yeah.
So the book's on community building.
Yep. Engagement from Scratch is a really great one. It's by Guy Kawasaki. And in that, one of the main proponents, if I remember correctly, is once your website or your community reaches the point to say if you have 100 posts and if you have 100 posts and 50 of those posts get engaged upon organically, then that's the point where you've hit the tipping point, and your community will grow on its own. So we started tracking things like that and keeping an eye out for things like that, because we do have fake profiles that go in and ask and engage upon every single comment and or post. Some other books, Engagement from Scratch, Buzzing Communities is a great one. Buzzing Communities.
Tell you what, I'm going to send an email to you and have you give us some of these, and we'll get them out to everybody.
I can't remember the other ones. I just have a giant Kindle that I buy all of them on.
I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap it up here. You hang around for a few minutes after the fact? All right.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. You're going to get a survey in the mail from me. Please fill it out. I promise it's 6 questions or less, but it does help us guide where we're going with this event. So again, AJ, thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate
thank you guys.
it. Thank you all.